Are you ready to organize your amazing ideas into a powerful book? You are in the right place at the right time to learn how to write your book. Hi, I'm Joyce Glass, and welcome to the Write Hour, nonfiction tips from the Write Coach team. We are so glad you joined us today. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing good. And I'm trying to, hold on, here we go. Getting things organized here. I'm still getting coordinated with this going live and having a video all at the same time. It doesn't always go well. Okay, I'm going to share. So how is everybody today? I'm excited to have Sarah. Is it Kalmeta? Is that how you say your last name?
That's correct, yeah.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you, Sarah, here with us. She has been in aviation for a while, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about her. But what I'm excited about is we're talking about mindset today, as well as micro habits and how they both can help you. And so if you have any questions, we would love to answer them. But we will take little breaks and answer questions as we go through. So if we're in the middle of something, I may not stop and answer it right away, but we will get to those questions. So definitely, if you, while we're talking, if something comes into mind, you're like, oh, I need to ask about that, or want more information, let us know. But you can also learn a little bit more about Sarah on the Write Coach page at thewritecoach.biz/1402. After this is over, this replay will be there, as well as more information on how you can connect with Sarah too. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, Joyce.
You're welcome. And I'm really appreciative. She has graciously got up at 6 a.m. in Hong Kong. So it's already Wednesday there. And she's up bright and early to join us. So it's a privilege to have you here, and I appreciate it. And so tell us, I know everybody wants to know a little bit more about you and your journey to becoming a pivot point coach. And I said pivot point, if I can enunciate correctly here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, to be up at 6 a.m. is not really too much of a stretch. I do get up at about 5, so I just had to kind of adjust my morning routine. But thank you so much for having me here and for doing this live stream at your evening time. I appreciate that as well. So Joyce and I connected on LinkedIn, actually. And I started seeing her posts in some of the groups that I was in, and I reached out because I have some visions of writing a book. And so we started a conversation, and then she realized that I'm a podcast geek, and I love to be speaking on podcasts and talking about very interesting things with different people. So thank you so much for having me here. So as Joyce said, my background was in aviation for the last 15 years. I went to an aeronautical university. I have worked in 4 different countries in the aviation space, specifically the private jet sector. And then last year, I pivoted into becoming a coach and setting up Pivot Point, as well as another company. So I'm often known as an overachiever amongst my friends. So of course, I didn't decide to start one company. I started 2 at the same time and made really great use of the downtime last year. And it was completely unintentional. It wasn't intentional, but then when it started to happen, I just thought, all right, let's go for it. I took that opportunity and just went with it. So with Pivot Point, I get to work with people. I do a lot of work with schools, particularly high schools and universities, and then some corporate workshops as well, where I am helping them through transition. So that might be a personal transition, such as moving country. All of a sudden they're in the workforce for the first time. They've just graduated. They're not sure what to do. First-time managers. All of these different types of situations, and we help to reframe and shift their mindset so that they can recreate their future, recreate their reality. And we do this by implementing micro habits and life systems so that they can approach life with confidence and conviction.
Awesome. I love that. So tell us a little bit more about the 4 different countries you've been in, and a little bit, because I know your family comes from different countries. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Parents. Tell us a little bit about that. I find that fascinating. So
I was born in Chicago. I don't have the accent anymore. And my mother's from Poland, my father's from the Middle East, and they met there in Chicago. And we moved to Arizona. So then when I first started working, I worked in Los Angeles for a private jet company, and they sent me to Singapore. And I was sent to set up the office there and to train the team. And I had studied Mandarin at university, so I jumped on the opportunity, thought, this is my opportunity to get to Asia and experience what it's like over there. And I just fell in love with it. I had a great time. I was only there for a few months. But when the company decided, okay, it's time to come back to LA, I said, actually, this contract's over. I want to stay here. So I picked up and moved to China in 2011, in early 2011. And I was in Shanghai first, and then Beijing. And then I came to Hong Kong in 2012. So I'm now a permanent resident of Hong Kong. So I call this Home Kong. It's my home away from home. And so those are the 4 different countries that I've worked in.
Awesome. I love that. I love hearing people's story and where they've come from and what brought them to where they're at now. But I love how that you coach people and you help them make these conscious decisions to unlock their full potential, which is something that, as a writing coach, I'm doing the same thing, but for a different aspect. I want them to be able to have their full potential as writers. And so that is, very important with that. But many new writers, they need help growing in their confidence, and sometimes even as a person. And this takes a healthy mindset. So how do you help people with this process?
That's a great question. And it's different for each person. So I've had a lot of people ask me, do you have a course, or do you have, a method? And I don't really believe in the pivot point way, for example. It's each person is going to be unique in their life experiences, their work experiences, and what works for them. I mentioned I wake up at 5 a.m. and I have a morning routine, and that works for me. But someone else might be sitting there going, oh God, no way. And they're a night owl. So they have the opposite. They might have an evening routine, or perhaps they're most creative in the middle of the day. So they set a routine around, what we traditionally call the lunch hour. Right. So I do an assessment with each person, and we figure out, what does success look like to them? So I define myself as a success coach in the most succinct terms. And with each person, they become a co-creator in that success. So they're going to let me know what it is they want to achieve. Are we focusing more on the personal side? Are we focusing on things at work? So for example, I help people to develop professional presence. And that to me means having awareness, having empathy, being able to public speak in front of, your team, pitch to your boss or a client, or even at a conference, whether that's on Zoom or in person, with not only confidence of the topic, but with conviction. A lot of people know the material, they're very intelligent, but then they freeze deer in the headlights when they get up in front of that group of people, and they stutter, or they come across as inauthentic or disgenuine. And so they don't get the trust of the audience. And of course, one bad experience scars them, and they never want to do it again, or they suffer. So we break it down, we bring it back to basics, and we then start to practice, because practice makes progress. I'll give them homework in between the sessions, and then we build on these different habits that we implement so that they can then have it become second nature.
I love that. I love that, because that's something that we've talked about on this podcast before with Omar Rafat. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he is a hypnotherapist. But he talked about confidence, and he has an interesting story too. He's from Egypt, lives in the UK, and was a surgeon. I think a neurosurgeon too, some kind of surgeon, and became a hypnotherapist. And I'm like, that's a huge.
Yeah.
And what happened with him was that he realized that a lot of the people's problems that he was seeing could have been actually helped through other methods if people learn how to take care of themselves. And again, that is, writing is a mental and emotional activity. And if you don't have a healthy mindset, it can be really tough to do that. And just like with any, anything that you do, like you said, you're talking about the corporate world, and it still relates to writers, because if you can't talk to people to, say, interview them for your book, that's gonna that's gonna
Exactly.
hurt you. That's not gonna help. Or if you're too scared to even reach out to people, that's a problem. And so those are things that I love to help people with. What are some, I guess, some tangible things that you could say that help with mindset? What are a few things that you kind of encourage people with?
So I encourage people to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Many of us get into our comfort zone and we like it there. We feel like it's safe. We feel like we can control the outcome. But in reality, control is an illusion. And I think last year really demonstrated that, and hit that out of the park for a lot of people. But, we're often our own biggest obstacles to success. And as you mentioned, people are too afraid to reach out to someone. So they don't even start. And so my advice to people is always to think of one small thing that they can do every day that will reach them towards their goal. Now, if we rewind a little bit, most people don't have a clearly defined goal, and that's another issue. And so they're trying to do 10 things and they can only achieve 10% of each of those things. So I help people to narrow their focus and go back to their values. So we'll start with a value finding exercise if it's not crystal clear what their top 2 to 3 values are. And once we define those, this person can then start to use that as the guiding compass or lens that they look at things and how they approach everything. And then they can be the awareness builds to conscious decision making. And then as they, start to write, they just do a little bit every day. Maybe they research the topic that they want and they take some notes, or they just write a paragraph. It's just minor steps towards that goal. And then, afterwards we reflect. So that's the second key thing is you take the steps every single day, and then you look back maybe the last week, what are the things that you achieved? And you see if there's a pattern emerging, you start to put things together, then you start to make your steps and you can start to refine. And instead of, maybe the squiggly line like this, you start to make those twists and turns a little bit less severe so that you can then start to go in a more direct direction. But again, as long as you're moving in that direction, you're making progress, even if it's very small.
Yes. And I love that. And that leads to our micro habits, but I love the getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is so true, because especially if you're someone who's sharing maybe a personal story and there was some trauma involved, that's going to be uncomfortable to share, even though in your heart or your hearts, you want to share it. But it is every person that I've talked to that writes something that has to deal with any kind of trauma, it is mentally and physically, emotionally exhausting as you're doing that, because you're many ways you're reliving it. Your brain has to relive it to write about it. But what you have to do is that mindset, knowing your ultimate goal is, I'm doing this to help people. I'm not doing this to hurt me more. I'm really doing this to help people. And I like that. And so what are micro habits? Because you were kind of alluding to that with taking the little steps. And how do they help us?
So I just want to comment on what you said, because I think it's very important. A lot of people are scared of shining that flashlight on the dark stuff, their traumas. But like you said, when you are writing about something like that, you're sharing a personal story. And we as humans connect by story. And if you can share your story and make impact just for one person to help them shift their life or heal from their own trauma, that's making a difference. And just the process of going through writing the book, you might relive and feel the emotions of that event, but oftentimes we suppress events that happen to us, change. There's trauma in all these different situations. And by writing, by going through that process, you're putting it on paper, you're getting it out of your body, in your system, so you can then process those emotions and let them go. So it is a healing modality for you as well. So I really encourage anyone that has considered writing, whether or not you'll publish it, write it down first, get it out, and then you can also more objectively look back at it later.
Yes.
So I just wanted to comment on that because I think that's
Well,
very
I love
important.
that. Let me pick up on that too, because it is very healing. Anybody, I mean, I know for me, when I was young and after having my son, there were some things that I needed to work through, and I started journaling as a way of just processing that information. And it is a huge help. But that's also what led me into writing, because, like, I really enjoy this. I like this. And I'm a natural born storyteller. So to tell the stories was fun. And that's what started my writing journey. And so if that's the way your writing journey starts, like she said, that micro habit of journaling 5-10 minutes a day, thinking about things that, maybe that happened to you, or things that you're struggling with right now. Because I mean, even now, today, I still journal, because it's a way of clearing your mind. And when you can clear your mind and get things out, it is huge, because then that you let that creativity flow.
Exactly.
That's when that creativity flow. You want people. I was talking with somebody today about motivation and writing. That is what motivates you, when you can have that creativity, and it's just, you can release it, and have a way to do it. So tell us a little bit more about the micro habits.
So micro habits, like you said, it's just taking those small steps. A lot of people get overwhelmed with the project that they have on hand. So of course, writing a book is like, wow, where do I even begin? There we have to have structure. We need to make it engaging. What topics do I write about? And many of us are interested in a lot of things. So again, we start chasing too many different topics, and then we get overwhelmed because we're only achieving a little percent of each. And so there's something shown, and it's proven that if you, for example, at the beginning of the year, set 10 goals for yourself or for your organization, it is 90% or something like this likely that you will achieve 0 or 1 of them. However, if you set only 2 to 3 goals, then you have a much higher percentage of achieving those goals, because you can narrow your focus and put your energy in. And just like the compass being your guiding principles of how you make choices, those goals become, is this action, does this thing help me towards that 1, 2, 3 goal? If the answer is no, you put it aside, right?
Is a great filter. That is a great filter of learning. I call it the power of no. No, this is not good for me right now, or this is the time of our season in my life to do this right now, because right now my goals are 1, 2, 3. I love that.
Yeah. And so what I actually do is, and I'm very old school. I have a planner that I write in. It's, got the daily entries. And so for me, writing is very manual, because I will remember it better, right? If I write something down, it's going to stick in my brain. If it's on the computer, it's there. I know I can access it later, so it doesn't stay in there, right? It's I know where to access it, but it doesn't become part of my psyche. So I write down my goals to make them concrete, and also to set reminders. So what I do is, at the beginning of the year, I reflect on the last year, and then I'll set some goals for the entire year forward. Then I'll break them down into quarterly, and then weekly, and then daily tasks. So it's a reverse engineering of what are the things that help me towards achieving these goals? What are some of the small steps? And then every month I will go back and look at, what did I learn this past month? What lessons have I learned? What were my successes? And what is my focus for next month? So that I can reorient myself if I get off track. And then every week I do the same thing. I look back at, what worked well, what was I doing that I could stop doing, what do I need to start doing, and then that helps me again to build upon each of these small steps. So, first is to identify those goals or what you want to change, and then the why. Simon Sinek, I always like to refer to him, that start with why. This is the most important thing, because again, telling a story, if you know the why, you can influence and inspire people to make that change, or to, build in these habits so that they can reach their goal. And then once they know the why, you then create the what and the how, and you track your progress. So that's why I every week have this daily check-in with myself. It's in my calendar. So my phone will set a reminder for myself, And then it blocks off my time as well. So when I'm setting meetings with other people or, setting a time with a client, that time is already blocked off. So it's my non-negotiable, and it's an appointment with myself. So many of us who don't know how to say no, we want to please everybody and, do all the things, we get overexcited. That's a way to kind of trick yourself. It's a life hack, if you will, to give yourself that time. So the micro habits, it's small things. One thing that you can do consistently every day. So I like to use weight loss as an example because many people know, weight loss, people start resolutions in January, and they set these really unrealistic goals. I want to lose 30 pounds in a month. And then they get frustrated, they get overwhelmed, and then they stop, right? And then maybe they pendulum swing the other way and, eat all the junk food, and they are hard on themselves. They don't have that self-compassion. The critic comes into play. And then they're right back where they started, or maybe even worse, right?
Right.
So that micro habit is something that you can do every single day for the next 30 days. And then you build upon that. So if that micro habit is waking up 5 minutes earlier, so you can incorporate a small movement routine in your living room or in your bedroom, then you start. And then after a week, you get comfortable, you can set your alarm for 10 minutes before that. And now maybe you can do some jumping jacks, you can incorporate some additional movement. The next week, 15 minutes, and naturally your body will start to wake up, and it won't be this 1 hour back and you're exhausted and dragging yourself out of bed and hating every minute of it. You slowly build this time for yourself, and then you do what works for you. Maybe that's going for a walk and watching the sunrise. Maybe that's going for a run. Maybe that's picking up the kettlebell and jump rope and doing some cross training. For each person, that's different. Right. And maybe your exercise is yoga. Maybe it's, very gentle Tai Chi. It's going to be different for everyone, and that's okay. I'd like to stress that no matter what your habit is, it's different for everyone. So don't compare yourself to, your friend who's already implemented maybe 5 things. Go on your own pace and just do something that every day you can commit to. And one way to easily achieve this is, let me just pull this up here so I can give a visual. I don't have my calendars in the other room, but when you have the monthly calendar like this, can you see that?
Right. Yes.
So if you want to build your micro habit, and then say it's waking up, 5 minutes early every day, or writing every day, right? You just spend 5 minutes writing. You put an X. Then the next day you put an X. You put it. You're building a chain. So if all of a sudden you get to a day where you're like, no, I don't feel like it today. And then you look at this and you see, or you skip it. And then the next day you have to start that chain over. It's that loss aversion. Psychologically, we are programmed to avert loss. So this is a visual representation, and it's, it's that accountability. It's, oh gosh, I've broken the chain. And then, the next time it happens, you'll be, oh, what? I want to see the full page of crosses on my calendar. And I think it was
But one thing I have to say about that though is, hey, look, you did 6 days in a row. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. That's something that I'm learning and listening to is Are You Up for the Challenge by Rod Hairston. And he talks about, congratulating yourself for the wins. So don't forget to congratulate, because that reinforces too, versus going, oh, I missed a day. Life is over. Like,
exactly.
It's not over. You had one day. Okay.
Exactly. This is why I do the weekly check-in, where I look back and I say, what have I achieved? What were my successes in the last week? Because we're never going to be perfect. That's why practice makes progress, not practice is, leads to perfection, because there's no such thing.
Practice makes progress. I love that.
If you celebrate your successes, so often we're looking at that goal and, oh, it's so far away and I'm not at that finish line yet. But if we can look back and say, hey, I did these things, that's better than last month when I did not write every day. But at least I wrote for 30 minutes this last week. Wow, that's incredible. And then you can re-inspire and motivate yourself. So you're right. There's a caveat. It's a tool to use yourself to visually not want to break the chain, but you don't want it to allow that inner critic to stop you from starting again, right? It's just each day is a new day.
Defeat if you miss a day.
Correct.
Just jump back on. Yeah. So I love that. And there was something else you were saying a minute ago about getting up earlier. So I'm like, has Sarah been in my head? I've been actually working on that. And that's something, another book that I'm reading, going through, and there's a movie called The Miracle Morning. I don't know if you ever heard of that, by Hal Elrod. And that is a habit that I've been working on myself. And a lot of stuff going on, and hadn't done so well in the past 3 days. I've been doing good. And getting up without the snooze has been a big thing. I have been hitting snooze, and he shows you how to do that. But the other thing, like you said, back to knowing your why. I want to get up early because I like easing into my day and having that time to meditate and to pray and to work on myself and to journal. And then I take my little dog for a walk and make my breakfast and, and just ease into my day versus waking up like, oh my gosh, my first call is in an hour. Let me see, what can I get done? And then that's starting the day with stress. And so you bring that stress into everything that I do, and I don't like that. And so part of the Miracle Morning is bedtime affirmations, going, okay, this is why I'm doing this. And I'm going to go to bed at this time, and I'm going to get up at this time. And it tells your brain, you're telling your brain what you want. So the same thing with your habits. I love that, tell your brain I want to write 15 minutes every morning. And like she said, start with 5. If you're not doing anything right now, not writing at all, and you want to write a book, start with 5 minutes and just write your ideas out. And whatever comes to mind that you want to write about, and do that and start practicing that habit. Then you can start learning how to actually do the writing process, which is something that I teach. But I love that.
Can I say one more thing about the language? This is a trick that I will teach people when it comes to changing mindset. So you talked about bedtime affirmations or, visualizing the goal, and that's very important, but it's also important to use the correct language. If you say, I want to write 15 minutes every day, that means you're not, and that's something you're striving for. However, if you change the language to, I write 15 minutes every day. I am the person that writes every day. So I write 15 minutes every day. Your brain psychologically responds to that differently than I write or I want to write. So you're already putting yourself in the position of, I am a writer. I write 15 minutes every day. And when you talk to people, you say the same thing. So for example, for myself, I don't eat dairy. The reason I don't eat dairy is because when I eat it, my stomach gets really bloated and uncomfortable. It's, painful. Then for the next few days, it's not, I'm not happy. I've even had headaches from it if I eat certain types of cheeses, or even wheezing in some cases because there's mold in it, right? I get this allergic reaction. When I said I can't have dairy, then the mindset of every time I saw that cheese platter was, oh, I miss it. I want it, Now that I say I don't eat dairy, when it's there, it's just like another thing on the table, and it doesn't even catch my attention.
Right.
So it's very important to use the correct language and to visualize yourself already being there. I am the person that wakes up at 5. I wake up at 5, not I plan to wake up at 5. Or for me, writing my blog, when I first started writing a regular blog, it was, I plan to write my blog next week. So what would happen? Next week would come and I wouldn't write the blog. I'd find some excuse, or, I'm not inspired, so I'm not going to write today. Now that I say, I am finishing my blog by the weekend, the first draft, I finish it by the weekend, and then I can refine it, and I have time, so I have less of that stress and then that inner critic. And I think that's, very key, is the language we use is very important to shifting our minds and our habits.
I love that. That is perfect, because that is true. And that's those books that I'm reading. That's what it talks about. How you talk to yourself, the self-talk, the self-love is extremely important, because if you let the inner critic rule your life, then you're not going to see the joy and find the joy in life. And if you are, you take responsibility and take action for your own life. I am someone who loves to wake up early. I am a writer. Me just saying that makes me feel good.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just, I am, and get in front of the mirror or somewhere, where nobody's looking, and you just start trying it out, because it really does make a difference. Because when it's that mind thing again, it's the mind. You can control the narrative, but you got to tell them what the narrative is. And if the narrative has been for years, I can't, I am bad, or I am this, maybe you had a parent that didn't speak kindly to you, or a spouse, or a friend, or you were teased when you were little, and those tapes are still in your head of, I'm not smart, I'm not good enough, I'm not, capable, I'm not techie, whatever it is that I am not, then your brain's going to believe it, and you're going to, okay.
Exactly.
And I think it's a Henry Ford quote, where it said, it was something about, I can't remember, if it was being a millionaire or doing something. Whether you believe you can, then you can't. And if you can't, and if you believe you can, was the gist of it. And it is
a very powerful thing. They're those people who are so set on their goal. They can see themselves there. They know they can do it. And, I read Chicken Soup for the Soul, right? And I have my daily readings in the morning, and that's one of them. And these little stories of these people who were told by doctors, you will never walk again, or you can't do this because of that. And they set their mind and they decide right then and there, I will do it, and they do. They overcome these, what seem to be insurmountable odds, and they don't let that beat them down, because they have made up their mind. And so that's incredibly important to remember. And when that self-critic starts to come in, I give it a name. So mine is Silly Sarah. So that allows me to not believe everything I think, because you should not believe everything you think. We have so many thoughts through our head, and not all of them are ours. They can be programming from our parents, from society, from TV, your friends, school. You're trying to fit in because you want to be liked.
Exactly.
So when I can then say I have this thought, and it's like, oh God, I'm not creative, which is what I told myself for like 10 years. I stopped writing poetry. I didn't really write anything. And I have this like, I'm not creative. I'm a logical, rational person. I do project management, no, I don't do that. That stuff over there, it's too scary. And so I didn't. And every time I would try to do it, it would just, I would beat myself up. So then it would just stay there. As soon as I shift that and say, I am creative, I just need to find it again. I need to, work on this every day. I started to shift it, and then I would go, Silly Sarah, you used to write poetry all the time in high school. Why can't you do that again? We'll find it, don't worry. But by doing that, you can step outside of the thought and be a witness to it, rather than the receiver of this negative mindset.
Right.
And that you can say, okay, well, I'm going to put you in the corner for a timeout. And while you're in timeout, I'm going to spend 10 minutes writing, and I'll see what happens,
Exactly.
And then you can have this kind of internal dialogue with yourself.
I love how you gave your negative self a name, and that's something Rod Harrison talks about too, that he gives his, he has his unconscious mind and his conscious mind, and he calls his unconscious mind by his middle name, which I think is Earl, and his conscious mind is Rod. And so, and I'm like, okay, so my middle name's Elaine. I'm like, I could call my unconscious mind, or the negative thoughts, Elaine. Elaine, we are not going to talk about like that today. Today we are. Exactly. So, again, I do love that idea, because it does, it separates that from what really is, those negative thoughts and negative Nellies, as we like to call them, that come into our brain and tell us all the things that we can't do. And, especially, I can't tell you how many writers, and there's writers that have been writing for years and have bestsellers, say the same thing. Yeah. They struggle with the doubt and the self-talk too. Because, if they have one bestseller, they're like, well, can I really do it again? Was that just a fluke?
Yeah, exactly. Was that beginner's luck?
Yeah.
Again.
Exactly. And you do have to keep building yourself up and creating that muscle and creating that habit. And I love your idea of micro habits then that also lead to something that Rod calls it identity. And I like it. I like that too, where you create the identity you want. And when you create that identity that you want, then that's the life that you can enjoy. You can find joy there. Because
you don't have to fit the identity other people give you or other people wish upon you, right? You can create your own, and instead of trying to fit into this mold that, square peg in a round hole, you can then start to sit in your authenticity and say, no, this is me. This is what I'm doing.
Yes. And when you
too, can you see me?
Yes.
Do you have it?
No, I don't, but I like that.
It's a fantastic book. Brian E. Robinson, Dr. Brian Robinson. Sorry, I'm like back. I don't know why I can't.
Right. It's backwards from what you think.
Exactly. Normally it's mirrored. So this is, again, micro habits. Start small. So this book, I don't have to read the whole thing. I'm a bookworm, so I love reading. But some people don't. It's really hard. So I also have the Daily Stoic. So I brought these out for a reason. These are two that I read every single morning. And then, it's this one specifically is for writing, but it's just a thought, and then that way you can have that kind of as in your mind, you digest it, and then that can set your theme for the day. So today is the 20th over here, 19th for you. So for example, the 19th said, so say goodbye to worry. Don't worry about things, just do your work and you'll survive. The important thing is to have a ball, to be joyful, to be loving, and to be explosive, and you grow. And savoring the entire writing process. So then there's a little bit more. There's a nice quote at the top, a little bit of description, and then the takeaway.
I love that.
This is a micro habit that everyone can implement without, having to worry about, am I doing the right thing? It's just digest these little tidbits of wisdom and let them take you on your journey.
And that made me think of something that we talk about in the Write My Book Bootcamp group, is when you are writing your book. And so you start getting deep into it, but even before you're deep into it, you can do this. If you think about your book before you go to bed, while you're sleeping, your mind is going to be working on that and processing that idea. So ask yourself a question, well, how can I share this better? Or is there a story that I could share about this? And start looking at it, because what that does is that tells your brain you want to look for that. You are looking for that information or looking for a way to share that. So when you get up, your brain's already primed and ready to go. There's your motivation. Because someone, like I said earlier today, was talking to me about motivation and finding motivation to write. That is your motivation. It's the power of the brain is just incredible. And if you study it and learn about it, you will see you have that power and you have that ability. And go ahead.
Sorry, I was coming on the dreams, because for me, I'm a very vivid dreamer. Every night, every morning I wake up and I can recount these vivid or even lucid dreams. And for some people, that's not the case. But like you said, if you go to sleep thinking about that, your subconscious may bring something to the surface in your dream that can help you. So having a dream journal and writing down the things that have happened, that might unlock something for you. And I believe the last time we spoke, we talked about this, and this was in one of your podcasts as well. When you get inspiration for something to write it down. Don't think, oh, I'll do that later, because then that thought might be fleeting and you won't be able to grab it again. Whether it's in your notepad on your phone or a physical book.
Right. And it won't come out the same way, because I've had that happen where I've had this great idea and I thought, I'll remember that, and I don't.
Yeah.
Or I have this great idea and now I'm like, okay, I need to write that down. And when I write it down and I go back, oh yeah, I remember that. And so it sparks another whole conversation, with yourself. And I love that. Well, writers have to connect with potential readers, and it's best to be their authentic self. That's something we've been talking about, because this season on the podcast is about making connections. And so what are some ways that writers can show up on social media authentically to connect with their readers, because we want them to be their followers, to become their fans, and then their raving fanatics.
Yeah.
So what are some things that people can do with showing up authentically?
I mean, I've got half of my head shaved, so I'm pretty sure I know how to be authentic. But, this was something I wanted to do for a very long time, but I was afraid of what people would say, what they would think. I worked in the corporate world, ooh, is this too edgy? And I wasn't yet ready, but in this last year, I've really come into my own, and I would call myself an authenticity advocate as well. And, on social media, I actually got off of it in November 2019. I just got sick of it, spending too much time. I wasn't using it as a tool. And so I got off of it. But then once I came back with the coaching business and also the e-commerce one, I started to be on there to connect with my clients, my customers. And I started to put little IGTV videos up or little stories, and something kind of poignant came to mind. And that got people to know who I am as a person. And then we could engage, and they could ask questions, or, they might reach out and say, thank you so much for sharing that. That really, resonated with me, because, our words are very powerful. And when you read a really good book or a poem that can stir emotion in you, we all know that these are the Pulitzer Prize winners, the very good books. And then sometimes you read a book and you're just like, this doesn't resonate with me, or it's, I feel like this book and then what I see on the internet about this person don't match. So our alarm bells are going off. So I think the key there is to just really be yourself. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, or, sometimes I put up a story. I've just come back from the gym. My hair's everywhere. I'm sweating. And I'm just like, hey guys, I just went for a run, but I saw somebody's t-shirt and it said, if not now, when? Any when. And I was like, wow, what a concept. I still put it out there, even though I didn't have makeup on, and I had these curly cues crazy everywhere. I probably look like Albert Einstein with my hair. But it's not being afraid to show up and be who you are, because you then allow other people to bring that wall down and connect with you, and also show up more fully in their own lives. We oftentimes are so worried about what other people are thinking.
Right.
Everyone's got this thought in their head. So in reality, they're probably not even thinking about you. They're thinking about what you're thinking about them. And we're now both sitting here locked in fear, not doing anything. So I think just if you have a message and you want to give it across, make sure it's your message. It's not the message your publisher told you to send. It's not the message your management says you must, deliver. It has to be something you believe in. And that's often why in the corporate world, you see people leave organizations at a certain point after joining, because they realize that company culture does not align with who they are. And if they continue to try and stay there as they're trying to deliver a message or lead and influence their teams, those people sit there and think, well, you don't do that, or you don't embody that, so why would I do it, right? And then you just have challenge after challenge.
Yes, so true. You've got to show up as you. And I hope, as far as I know, I feel like I show up as me, and that I'm connecting with a lot of you. But I love what you said earlier too. It goes back to that practice makes progress, and nobody's looking for perfection. I think what I call the days of perfection, like what I consider like maybe back in the 50s, the perfect wife who was always perfectly dressed and hair done and nails done and yada yada yada. We all know that she doesn't exist. She gets stressed, she snaps at the kids, she forgets to pick up the dry cleaning. All these things happen. Nobody has a perfect life, and it's okay, because perfection is an illusion. Some people might have things easier or better than you, but that doesn't mean their life is perfect, or their struggles may be different than your struggles, but doesn't make one any less valid than the other. We all
have people put out their best self, right? Instagram is that curated life. And they might look like they have it all together. They might look like they're successful and happy, but on the inside, they're miserable. And they're just trying to put up this front of happiness and fulfillment to convince themselves. And I know that because that's where I was 3 years ago.
Right. Right.
And so you can't judge a book by its cover, for one. But you have to remember that we all are on that same plane, and we're all, there's an image at Burning Man where it's two adults back to back, facing the other direction, but on the inside are two children, two little kids touching hands, right? And that is very powerful because inside we all have that inner child, that little piece of us that just wants to connect. We just want to be seen. We want to be heard. But the adult part of us is like, oh, but I can't show vulnerability. And then Brene Brown talks about this all the time. And there's a lot of authors that talk about this.
Yeah.
And it's important to be vulnerable because that's how we connect with other people. And that's how we can start to shift things.
Exactly. One of my favorite people is Amy Porterfield. And I love her because she is authentic. She doesn't claim to have it all together. She is inspiring and she's funny. And she's always got practical advice. And if I could be like anybody, she is somebody that I want to be like. And she does remind me of my older sister, which is funny.
Yeah, I have a girlfriend here who is a mom blogger. That's her. And she's got this mom podcast. And her Instagram and her, she's just real and raw. She's like, this is the life of a mom with two young children. Like, look at the chaos around, or, doing these stories, again, no hair and makeup done. And ladies, this is the reality when you've got a 2-year-old and an infant, or breastfeeding or whatever it is. And she just wakes up every day or she'll take a photo and be like, I've got a lot of comments because I've lost some baby weight recently, but I have to tell you that voice inside my head, I still, view myself this way. And she's just honest, and she's not afraid to share that. And it resonates with so many people, and it inspires me as well, because we don't have to have that polished, pretty front and exterior. It's just get your information out there, just start, and then you refine it, and you can't learn if you don't even begin, right?
Exactly. And changing gears just a little bit, you said you love to write poetry. How did you become interested in poetry?
I'm not too sure. When I was in middle school, I remember loving Shel Silverstein, and actually I've got his book there, Everything on It, Where the Sidewalk Ends, So I bought it a few years ago just as nostalgia, but I remember loving his poems. I really, in literature class, we had some Edgar Allan Poe or Robert Frost poems, and they just always stuck with me. I'm not going to pretend that I really understood them at that age, but something about them really moved me.
It touched you.
Yeah, it touched me, and it touched my soul, and it just really kind of got me thinking. I've always been very curious. I've always loved to learn, but something about that ability to, or when we learn to write haikus in class and things like that, the ability to make this image appear in someone's mind or heart and connect with them in just so few words, or in this way that painted a picture in my mind rather than a whole paragraph that could give me the same information.
Right.
And I don't know. It just, I've always been someone who felt really deeply. And I hid that for a long time because I, was told I was too much, or, you have to you have to present yourself in a way, don't be too emotional, or don't, you're too sensitive. But in reality, there's a lot of people who are very highly sensitive and, intuitive and deep feeling, and that's okay. They just have to manage energy differently.
Right. And I consider that a gift. It's a gift to be able to have that, because you can connect with others deeply and you have that energy. But the thing about it, because I'm very similar to that too, is if you're around somebody who's very draining, it does drain you physically, your physical energy. And when you're around somebody and their energy and your energy are good, and you're like, ooh, you pick just like being with you today. It does. It's a pick me up. And so I love that. Well, what words of advice and encouragement would you have for any writers struggling with their mindset or creating these micro habits to advance their writing careers?
So I would say that there's a couple things. So which I mentioned before is, we have to just begin somewhere. So just start today, commit to writing for 5 minutes, you can make it for 3 minutes if you want, just commit, start today. Give your inner critic a voice, a name, a character, if you will.
Yes.
Make them a cartoon, or, it's like when you do public speaking and they tell you to imagine the audience naked or something.
Right.
Make it feel more comfortable.
I loved your silly Sarah. I think that's perfect,
Yeah, because it also makes me kind of like giggle, and, it's a bit funny, it's a bit silly. And I am silly. But, I personify that critic. So I would just say, start somewhere, start small, and really with the mindset, you need to remember that you will not be inspired every day, and you may not have motivation every day, and that's okay. But by getting that out on paper, you could even write about, like, I'm really feeling stuck today. And maybe you just write words. Maybe they're not even complete sentences. And you let that percolate, because then when you go back and reflect, or maybe the next day, because that whole morning, the rest of your day, you've got those kind of themes and words in your head, the next morning, it'll start to flow. So it's okay if you're not inspired every day. I'm not, I get up at 5, I like to go to the gym, I'm quite athletic. And for me, movement gets my energy unstuck. So if I don't exercise for a few days, whether that's yoga or running or whatever it is, I start to feel like anxious and antsy, and, my ideas are not flowing as much. But if you move, you can move that energy. So if you just write, you get something out, then you can start to slowly unblock those thoughts so that they can, flow a little bit later. So I think just remembering inspiration and motivation will not be every day, but there's something to say about dedication and consistency. You look at entrepreneurs, and, we all know them as overnight successes. Wow, look at this amazing thing they created, and all the money they're making, and the fame that they have. Well, guess what? They probably spent, the last 10 years developing that. Or maybe they got rejected 100 times, and then finally some publisher. I mean, J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter books was, penniless basically before, and just writing. She'd go to this library.
Food stamps too. She was on foods. It was pretty bad.
Exactly.
And now I don't think she's ever going to have to worry about a food stamp ever. So that's the thing, and you pinpointed perfectly there: persistency and consistency, and that's a message I've heard this week more than once. Is if you are consistent, you will create the habit that you want. And writing has to become a habit if you want to be a professional writer and write books. Does that mean that you write 24/7 every day? No. You may only write for an hour a day. You may only write 15 minutes a day. And you may miss a day or two here and there because life, energy, whatever. Again, that's okay. But consistency, you pick back up. I mean, that's part of why when I do this podcast, I do in seasons. I do 6 at a time, and then I take 2 or 3 weeks off, and then I do 6 more. And I've done that consistently now for 3 years. And so people know, hey, Joyce is going to have a podcast out soon. Now, I've changed gears this year doing live streams, which I'm loving, by the way. And if you have any questions before we jump off, because we're almost done here, please feel free to ask. I would love to, Sarah and I would love to help answer your questions if you have anything. But being consistent is key. And here's the other thing, even if your consistency, okay, maybe I know one guy, his name is David Mike. He wrote his book. He only had 2 hours a week on Saturday. And it took him I think 2 or 3 years to write his book. And he blogged it as he went. So people were actually reading his story as he went along. And when he wrote the book, he wanted to be able to connect with these people and get that book out. He was consistent. And so if your consistency is once a week, long as you're consistent, that's what is important. And figure out what that is for you. because any habit, whether it's your writing habit, getting up early, exercising, eating better, all of them start with like Sarah's calling those micro habits, those little tiny steps that you can do. And I heard one thing, the book I'm reading, the Rod Harrison book, Are You Up for the Challenge? He talked about, tacking on a new habit with an old habit because it makes it easier. So if your normal thing is to get up early and to scroll through Facebook, well, get up early and write for 10 minutes, then give yourself the reward to scrolling through Facebook. So you're doing this thing, but you're just attaching it to something else. And so then it's much easier to make that micro change than to say, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and write for an hour, and you've been getting up at 9 the past 6 months.
And it's not just about the micro habits, it's also about the environment set and having these systems in place, right? Like setting the scene. It's the same reason why someone who used to be an alcoholic does not go back to the bar, right? Because it's too tempting. So if Facebook scrolling or Instagram scrolling or whatever habit that is sucking your time and distracting you from your goal, set the timer on the phone for screen time. Give yourself 30 minutes a day. And when that is gone, it's gone. And now I know that you can override it, right? You can put in the password and get 15 more minutes, which doesn't always work. Like I know when I first said it, I would listen, but then later I'd be like, I'll just, 15 more minutes. So my friend told me the other day that she had her friend set the FaceTime password on her phone for this screen time. So when it comes up, she doesn't know the code. And she has no choice but to just get off of it. So it's, you can set the scene and build a system that, these micro habits now are supported by the system around you. Tell your friends, I am going to do this once a week. And then by making that public, you are now accountable, because then if you're not doing it, you have to make an excuse. And that means you haven't made it a priority, right?
Well, we have a question. What do you write? Just getting on here. And Greg, Sarah is actually working on a book. She's got that in process and our ideas. But she is a pivot coach who is here helping us talking about micro habits and mindsets, which is extremely important when you are doing that. And because she's got these systems in place that you're talking about, it is easier to write, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. I started writing a regular blog once per month last year after launching Pivot Point. And that was my commitment, write at least one blog per month. And it was difficult at first, but I had the deadline of at least on the last day of the month, that blog had to go out to my readership base and put it on LinkedIn and put it on social media. And I let people know I write once a month. You can expect one newsletter or one blog from me per month. And by doing that, when I would get close to the end of the month, if I hadn't started anything, it was, I'm not going to go into the next month without having written something. I'm going to send something out. And, now that it's a regular practice, I can be more comfortable I write the blog with the main theme or topic, but maybe I also do an article, like a co-article with someone or an interview article with somebody. And I can produce more content. It's more easy because I've now developed a habit. And even last week, it was, December is a crazy month for a lot of reasons. It's end of year, you're with family, you're trying to, do all the holidays, and especially last year, we were of Zoom fatigue. We just wanted to rest. So I didn't have the capacity to write a full blog. So I wrote a newsletter just saying, hey guys, what a year. These are my reflections. Thank you so much. Like quick, this last year I did this and I'm focusing on this for the next 2 weeks and what you can expect in 2021. I listed out the ways you can work with me, and that was it. And then by doing that as well, those 4 things I listed, when I came to January, it was like, hit the ground running. We're going to now develop your rate sheet, your blurb about what this means and how does this look, because people were asking me questions. So I had no choice. So I set the scene for success. So that's also very important to go with the micro habit.
I love that. And that goes back to what we were talking about before about the habits with me getting up earlier. There's things I do at night to prepare myself to get up earlier. And like when I get up, I already have my clothes laying out. I know what I've got my schedule written out. It's on my calendar, and I know what's next. I don't have to get up and go, today's Tuesday. What am I going to do today? When you're in that fog, I don't have to think about it. It's already done. I just look and read. Okay, this is next. This is next. And that keeps you focused. Same thing with writing. If you plan, whatever your writing time, whether it's at night, in the morning, in the middle of the day, when you stop your writing time, plan what you're going to write about the next time. So you're working on chapter 1 and you need a story. I need to develop a story or find a story that relates to this topic. Then that's what you need to look for, and you're telling your brain what to look for. And so you go to bed, and whenever you get back up the next time to work on your writing, you sit down. You don't have to sit there for 10 minutes and go, where was I? What am I going to do next? You just start writing. So that's perfect about setting the stage for the next day. I love that. You have given us so many pearls of wisdom here, Miss Sarah. I appreciate it. And we got a little visit from Silly Sarah too. So but we'll keep her in her timeout chair most of the time. So not interrupt your flow. And I appreciate all that you have done here. And if you want to find out more about Sarah, I will post the link in the comments. But it's therightcoach.biz/1402. And you can learn more about Sarah. Her bio is there and links to connect with her on her site and LinkedIn. And what was the other? Instagram. Those are the places that you can find her. So let's see. Joey said, I'm listening to this again because it's exactly what I wanted to know today, how to break free from a bad pattern so I can write in the morning. Thank you. You're welcome, Joey. I'm so glad we could have Sarah help you with that. Because all of us, it's a lifelong thing to curate habits. I've been this wanting to get up early thing, I've been working on for like 5 years, but I had this, I don't even know if it was mindset. I'm sure this mindset was a lot of it, but just the simple steps that Hal Elrod gives in The Miracle Morning, they're so easy. I'm like, it's working. Finally, something that's working, and that's what you got to do. It's all trial and error, and just figure out what works for you. And so I'm glad. Right, and what doesn't work for you. And like for me, I'll tell you one of the things that I've had to learn. I can't do any work after 8 p.m. I'm bad about, I work from home. I'm bad about if I come back and work at my desk after 8 p.m., then I'll be up till 10, 11. Then by the time, because one more thing.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
You're one more thing, girl, too, yeah. And then that one more thing 2 hours later, and it's midnight, and I'm not to bed at the time I wanted to get to bed on. Yeah. So I've learned I got to cut off work, just like you have in the corporate world, you have work hours. I can't come back to my desk after 8 unless there's just some kind of deadline, that I've got to get something out. Is the only reason that I come back. And that's something that, you've got to figure out for you what worked for you with writing. So what was the name of the book? Of that book?
This one?
That book? Is that what you're talking about, Joey? Daily Writing Resilience, Dr. Brian Robinson, E. Robinson. Is that what you're talking about? Or The Miracle Morning? Are you talking about that one?
We talked about a few books, so.
We love it. If you didn't notice, we both have a little bit of a book problem.
I've got my bookshelf there, and that's just like part of it.
That's me too. I have books on bookshelves. I have books in baskets. I have books in bathrooms.
Well,
yeah. Well, don't get me all started on Audible and Scribd and Kindle and iBooks and I probably literally have enough books I could read for the next 10 years if that's just all I did all day long. Like,
I need to go to the forest and have like a few months of just nature and reading time to get through what I got.
There you go. Hopefully that was what you needed, Joey. If not, you can message me. Oh, yes, the Miracle Morning one. That's what she wanted. Okay. Awesome. Well, I appreciate. I love that one. I want to check that one out too, Sarah. I love the one that you mentioned. Well, thank you guys. If you have any questions whenever we're finished, if you're watching the replay, please feel free to put it here. If next week I'm going to be talking about something called your first 1,000 words. We were talking about micro habits, and these are the little steps you can take to start your book. If you're having trouble starting your book, that's what your first 1,000 words is for. And so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to be talking about that some more next week. Also, our guest next week is Vincent Davis. I think it's the third, what his full name is. And he's going to be talking about selling on Amazon. And so that's something that is very important to connect with your readers and be able to sell on Amazon is important. That you know how to do that, whether you're traditional or self-published. He's got a lot of tricks and hacks, so I'm excited about that. But thank you again, Sarah. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you later. So take care.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.